6,000 Ukrainian soldiers encircled, the pincers around Velyka Novosilka have closed. Dear friends, we are studying the situation on the front daily, opening, analyzing maps, and observing advancements or retreats. Together we draw conclusions on how certain events will ultimately affect the overall situation on the front. Before we begin, I would sincerely like to ask you to subscribe to the channel. Your subscription helps support its growth. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed. As you can see, while there's a festive atmosphere ahead of Christmas and New Year for many, the front remains unchanged. There are no holidays on the front line. Soldiers continue to perform their duties while we analyze the latest events over the past 24 hours. Let's start. There have been significant changes on the front over the past day. Without exaggeration, the most important event is the situation around Velyka Novosilka. First, we need to understand that Velyka Novosilka is not a small village like Robotyne or Novi Komar. It is a major settlement with multi-story buildings. Before the war, its population was about 6,000 people, larger than, for example, the town of Sudzha in Kursk Oblast, which was seen as a symbolic victory of the Ukrainian armed forces during their operations. In contrast, Velyka Novosilka is a settlement that once housed 6,000 residents before the war. Secondly, it is a key logistical hub for those controlling it. And thirdly, if Ukrainian forces are pushed out of Velyka Novosilka, as the situation is heading, it will come under Russian control for the first time. This settlement was never under Russian control, not in 2014, nor at the start of the 2022 conflict. However, this seems likely to change soon. Why am I saying this? Yesterday, Russian units made a significant breakthrough to the last supply route used by Ukrainian forces in Velyka Novosilka. This road, running from Huliaipol in Zaporizhzhia Oblast, was used to supply ammunition, evacuate the wounded, and move reinforcements. Previously, Ukrainian forces lost control of two other critical supply roads after losing the village of Rozdolna and the road leading toward Novi Komar. As a result, the only remaining road was the one from Huliaipol, which Ukrainian forces fought fiercely to hold on to for obvious reasons. Without it, the supply chain collapses. And yesterday, that collapse began. Russian troops advanced 3 kilometers from Storozhev and came dangerously close to this road. Their positions are now just a few hundred meters away, making the road unusable. How does this affect the local front line, and what's next? We can observe the use of tactics first introduced this year by General Mordvichev: encirclement and cutting off logistics. Velyka Novosilka is now in more than a semi-encirclement. While there's still a 5-kilometer gap, without that supply road, the garrison is effectively blocked. The eastern side has long been sealed off, and now the northern and southern sides are also cut. With the capture of Novi Komar to the north by Russian troops and the capture of Makarivka and Storozhev to the south, the fields in the area leave Ukrainian forces completely exposed. With Russian forces now at the road, the complete encirclement of Velyka Novosilka is near. Once this happens, Russian forces can push into areas with fewer fortifications, accelerating the advance westward, possibly into Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. Ukrainian analysts, including Deep State, Butusov, and MP Bezula, are already sounding alarms about this, acknowledging that after the fall of Velyka Novosilka, Russian forces could advance at a much faster pace. Moving further to Kurakhove, Russian forces raised their flag at the westernmost residential area of the city, at a medical complex, confirming their control over all residential quarters in Kurakhove. Ukrainian forces now control only the industrial zone, while Russian troops are preparing for its assault. Additionally, Russian assault groups advanced 2 kilometers from the village of Dalny towards wastewater treatment facilities, expanding their control northward to the southern borders of the area. Movement around Kurakhove is aimed at advancing toward Dakhny, which would result in the Ukrainian armed forces garrison in Kurakhove being completely encircled in the industrial zone. Additionally, there is ongoing movement toward Yantana, where battles for control of the village have already begun. Let's briefly touch on the situation in Kharkiv Oblast, as many of you have asked about it in the comments. First, the village of Lozova has come under Russian control. Evidence has emerged, including footage of the Russian flag being raised in the center of the village, confirming the earlier reports of its capture. Additionally, we discussed battles in Zarizov yesterday. The map hasn't been updated yet, but as of yesterday, Ukrainian forces controlled the southern part of the village. However, by midnight, they were forced out, and Zarizhov is now fully under Russian control. Meanwhile, Russian forces are expanding their presence in Dvorichna, now controlling nearly half the village. Reinforcements continue to arrive daily, establishing a stable foothold on the right bank of the Oskil River. This development poses significant long-term challenges for the Ukrainian armed forces in this area. Pokrovsk direction, as of December 25th. Mordvichev's pincer movement, encirclement of the Pokrovsk agglomeration from the east. For several weeks, Russian forces have been persistently penetrating the enemy's defensive lines, forming a western pincer, a substantial area of encirclement around the Pokrovsk agglomeration, which includes the cities of Pokrovsk, formerly Krasnoarmeysk, and Mirnohrad, formerly Dimitrov. Currently, battles are taking place near the village of Volki, which is expected to open the path for Russian forces toward Kotlin and Udakne, west of Kotlin. Using these advances, along with significant progress south of the Soliona River, the goal is to cut off the road to Dnipropetrovsk and push toward Hrishin. This has been an ongoing development for weeks. Yesterday, however, a long-anticipated and significant event occurred, as indicated by reports and reactions from the Ukrainian side. The eastern pincer of the encirclement around the Pokrovsky agglomeration has begun to take shape. This movement involves an advance through Myrolyubivka and then Novoekonomichne, bypassing Mirnohrad. Yesterday, Russian forces crossed the Kazeny Torets River and established a substantial foothold on the other side. Thus, the now characteristic Mordvichev pincers, named after General Mordvichev, commander of the Vostok grouping, have begun to form around Pokrovsk and Mirnohrad. The next steps will involve cutting off logistics to these cities, followed by a swift and decisive assault, though these developments will likely unfold in the coming year. Selidov direction, as of December 26th. Ukrainian forces fall back to their final defensive line before Dnipropetrovsk. In the area between the Soliona and Volchi rivers, Ukrainian forces are retreating to their last defensive line before the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast border. After being unable to hold their previous position for several days, Ukrainian troops are falling back westward to the area of Novoalexandrivka and Nadezhdinka. This withdrawal exposes their positions in Novovasilivka and Uspanivka to potential flanking attacks. Novovasilivka, already encircled from two sides, is unlikely to hold out for long, which will simplify Russian operations northward toward Udakne and Kotlin. Simultaneously, Russian forces are advancing toward Yasenevo and are on the verge of reaching the village from two directions, north and east. Yasenevo is a local logistical hub, and its loss would significantly complicate communications for Ukrainian forces in the area. The capture of Yasenevo would also threaten Ukrainian positions to the south, around Slavyanka and Petropavlivka. While Ukrainian forces are currently holding these positions and preventing Russian forces from advancing toward Andriivka, the situation remains precarious. As a result, the Ukrainian front in this sector is once again beginning to collapse. Stabilizing it will require additional reserves. That's the current situation on the front as of today.